Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at Mars turning direct in Cancer through all 12 whole sign horoscopes. This is going to be a good way for you to refresh on the topics that are being activated by the Mars retrograde and that will now be concluding, final lessons and insights being integrated, let's hope, in the weeks ahead as Mars concludes its direct motion through Cancer. We're going to outline the entire transit timeline so we can kind of refresh on where we've been and where we're going yet, because Mars is turning direct but still has to work its way through Cancer in direct motion. So we'll lay all of that out for you, tell you what topics are being activated by house in your birth chart for your horoscope, and then we'll hopefully be able to revisit this as Mars goes direct and concludes as it enters the sign of Leo in the spring by opposing Pluto again. So Mars still has quite a journey ahead that we'll take a look at and continue to work with in the upcoming weeks and months. All right, so before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections if you have them, or if you've got a good story to share. You can always use the hashtag grabbed. Tell us the transit, tell us your story, or email it to us, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. If you had a good Mars retrograde transit story, please send it to us. We'd love to include it on a future storytelling episode. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Head over there, click on the live events page. You can go see the webinar that we did last night on Venus's retrograde. Not too late to sign up for that, and you can get the replay, the recording, audio, video to listen to as you have the time to do so. And thanks for everyone who came out last night. It was a fun event. All right, now on that note, let us shift our attention to the real-time clock and let's take a look at this transit. So the transit of Mars retrograde in Cancer. What an epic Mars retrograde it's been. So here's Mars retrograde in Cancer. Let's take this forward just 2 days and notice you'll see the little S above Mars. That means that Mars is stationing, which means Mars is changing directions. You can also tell there's a giveaway in the sky because the sun will, start coming into the whole sign trine or degree-based trine with Mars right around the time that Mars changes directions. That's direct or retrograde. So it's always like a little tell. Anyhow, Mars turning direct will take it all the way. They'll be barely moving for the entire week ahead, sitting on that 17th degree of Cancer. And if we continue to take Mars forward through the sign of Cancer, what we're going to notice is that Mars doesn't actually fully leave the sign of Cancer until, back it up here just a little bit. I believe it's April 18th. Let's take it down to the hour just to be sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the 18th. Yeah, so it changes over late evening on the 17th into early morning of the 18th of April into Leo, which means between now here at the end of February and the end of February and the middle of April, we still have Mars in Cancer in direct motion. So even though Mars has changed direction and is in direct motion, which means its dignity has improved, its condition has improved, and therefore the things that it reflects often become a little easier to deal with, there's still a ways to go with Mars in the sign of its fall, now in direct motion. So we're not completely out of the woods yet. You will really notice the change after Mars goes through the opposition to Pluto in Leo, and then we're clear of Mars drama for a little bit. Just a little bit, though, because then Mars will do other things, as always. The planets always keep doing things. They keep thinging. So let's go back now and take a look at where we've been. That's going forward. But if we go backward, we can see that Mars actually entered the sign of Cancer. Here we are. This is right about September 4th into the 5th. So early September, we dealt with Mars in Cancer, and Mars went through Cancer all the way up until it would have been, early November? Yeah. So it changed into Leo at about November 4th. So September and October, let's call it, were Mars in Cancer months. Then Mars turned retrograde in Leo in early December, and then it finally retrograded back into the sign of Cancer by early January. So the retrograde in Cancer, the Cancer portion, began about January 6th. And January 6th up until now, we have thus been dealing with the Mars retrograde in Cancer. So that's kind of the timeline. And there's big chunks of time, obviously, that Mars covers in its transit that we have all been working with. So any of those time periods, if you're able to connect the dots between them, that can be useful, which is why I include it for us right now. But knowing that we also have this direct motion coming, what can we say generally before we go through some horoscopes here? A few general things to say would be Mars tends to bring in Cancer, tends to bring up things that are more emotionally charged, that have to do with things like home, family, parents, mother, ancestral legacy, the emotional reality, our inner emotional life, kind of moon topics. Anything that's sensitive with respect to home and family. The topic of water also. I can't believe how literal it was in my case where we had this literal toxic water issue in our neighborhood. Of course, I have it in the third house. So my local neighborhood got toxic water. But if you think about it from that perspective, then you have also anything to do with water, however literal or metaphorical, water representing instincts, emotions, sensitivity, vulnerability, safety, emotional security, things like that. So this Mars in Cancer in the sign of its fall, for many of us has been maybe a little angsty. Maybe there's been a lot to process mentally and emotionally around sensitive or vulnerable topics or places in our lives. But now that the retrograde is over, it is as though the setbacks, the delays, the revisions, the reflections have reached a place of finality, and we can begin to do things like move forward again, harvest from, gather the harvest of the actions that were done under the retrograde. If we had to change things or make revisions, and we might start to gather the benefits or results of that work or those changes. We may also see that if we felt like we're stuck or moving backward, that you just feel like you're moving forward again. You gather a sense of momentum once more. Or it can also be a period of breakdowns and delays, and now you're back on track. The timing is right again. And sometimes difficult things that have represented a breakdown and conflict may start to resolve themselves. So these are the different kinds of things I would watch for. Now let's take it through all 12 signs, and we're just going to briefly refresh on the topics of the houses. So if you're in Aries, this has been in that fourth house, that place of home and family, where Mars in Cancer can bring up all kinds of issues around safety, ancestry, your roots, the living environment. The karma of home and family has been something maybe that you've been visiting, and not necessarily all easy with Mars retrograde in Cancer in this place, right? So, but now you're reaching a place of culmination and maybe a place where you're ready to move forward again. Lessons have been learned, insights have been gained, setbacks or difficulties have been addressed, and you're ready to do some healing and integrating, let's hope, around those topics. For Tauruses, and this is me, right? It's your local environment. So hopefully you didn't have toxic water lines in your immediate environment, your village, your neighborhood, your community. The topic of siblings came up. My sister dealt with some health scares during this period. That was very third house in the realm of siblings for me as a Taurus rising. Anything involving siblings, peers, friends. Also, how you express yourself, how you articulate yourself through communication, speech, writing, the process of learning and acquiring new skills or developing new understanding or revising an approach or a skill or a talent or an ability and maybe polishing it or refining it or getting better at it somehow. And also learning to follow through with things that maybe you felt stuck with, and yet you've dug deep and found the resilience to keep going with things that maybe you felt like were breaking down. Now, for Geminis, we take this into your second house. We think about the topics of money and energy, resources, income, and expenditures are a second house topic. So if there's been a variety of financial setbacks, let's hope that they're reaching a point of conclusion now. If there has been a revision in how you spend your time, money, energy, or resources, let's gather that insight and now put it into good use and move forward again. Maybe there's been some drain on your energy. Maybe there's been a little drama within the family or in relation to things like assets, resources, and family. Whatever the case may be, the topic of money, values, resources, reaching an inflection point in a moment of transformation now as Mars is turning direct for all of you Geminis out there. All right, so for Cancer rising, you could listen to these for your sun or rising, but you guys know my channel, I always recommend rising. For Cancer risings, this is about health and body and identity. It's about maybe a period of time where you've been dealing with what feels like personal, physical health setbacks, or that you've been feeling worn down or beat up or tired, or you've been having to dig down deep in order to find resources of energy. Revisions with respect to health, body, physique, revisions with respect to things like the rhythms that you have in life. Very important for Cancer risings to have good rhythms. Also, how you express or work with anger, frustration, or the assertion or expression of your own needs. That's an important thing for Mars and Cancer in the first house. There are relatively healthier or unhealthier ways of getting what you want or need. And I'm sure that this retrograde for many Cancers has been about walking that line. Let's go forward to Leo. For Leos, we see Mars and Cancer in the 12th, a place of the unconscious, the invisible, a place that brings us away from our normal sense of control or understanding into the unknown, the mysterious, that divine sense of overwhelm, or sometimes isolation or privacy or solitude, as well as just unconscious material, all of which may have some bearing on things like emotional frustration or anger, or how you deal with conflict in the home or family, unconscious or blind spots with respect to your ancestral karma, and the things or people in your environment that undermine you versus those that support you emotionally can all be really important parts of Mars in the 12th house. So you're reaching a point of conclusion now with respect to this this work that's been featured with Mars in Cancer in your 12th house. And when it moves into your first house, you're likely to feel in late April, you're going to start to feel really empowered. And there's going to be a way in which all of this work culminates for Leos in a sense of, that the empowerment of the self and identity relative to what other people need or want you to be or think that you ought to be. There's going to be a way in which the exploration of these unconscious dynamics leads to a period of great empowerment in late April. So for Virgos, we see that Mars is retrograde in your 11th house, the place of groups and wishes and aspirations, community, friends and colleagues. If there has been some drama or some hardship among friends or groups or communities, maybe you've been holding space for people who have gone through hard times or are down on their luck, so to speak. Maybe you've been dealing with conflicts among social circles or groups of friends. Maybe there's also been some way in which you are exploring how much to stand out, or what is your capacity to lead or be an individual with your own unique needs and feelings within a group. Sometimes Mars in the 11th is all about how do I stand out while fitting in at the same time. It's a tension we have to hold. So Virgos, you might be looking at that, and maybe there's some background or crossover with family karma at the exact same time. How do I stand out or fit in with my own family? For Libras, this is taking place in your 10th house, which is the career house. So what has the drama been looking like in your workplace environment? Relationship with coworkers, colleagues, a boss, changes with respect to how things are being managed or run, the kinds of projects you're involved in, the kinds of tasks or responsibilities you have, maybe the slack you've been picking up for other people. Also, what are there emotionally manipulative people or dynamics in the workplace that you've been trying to work with or around? And maybe you're reaching a point where some period of drama or a period of deep reflection upon the healthy or unhealthy dynamics at play in the workplace are reaching a conclusion. It's like, now I've learned some lessons and I'm ready to make some decisions or make a change or take what I've learned and put it into action. Whatever the case may be, the changes in the workplace have been pronounced for Libras. So with Scorpios, we're looking at the 9th house, the place of the higher mind and beliefs. It's been an interesting time for Scorpios to revise or think very deeply about their beliefs. and their beliefs with respect to the formation of your beliefs with respect to things like home and family, where you come from, how you were raised, the beliefs that were instilled upon you, the values religiously, politically, ideologically. Have you been looking at those things and maybe challenging, reviewing, or revising those things? Also, the relationship between expressing your own needs, feelings, and connection to truth. For Scorpios, it is, a lot of times Scorpios kind of hold their cards close to their chest. This is a retrograde that may have you looking very deeply at your values and how easy or difficult it is to naturally express them or live from them outwardly. It's a vulnerable thing to wear your convictions and your beliefs on your sleeve, especially if you're surrounded by other people who don't feel completely safe to open up to with respect to your own ideas, thoughts, and opinions. So all things to consider for Scorpios. Let's go on to Sagittarius, where we see the Mars retrograde in the 8th house, a place of soul contracts with other beings. Mars in Cancer in the 8th can speak to difficulties coming up in the bonds that we have with other people, the exchanges of value, energy, time, money, resources. Maybe it's not been equal, or maybe there's been a way in which you've needed more than you can give, or someone has needed more than they can give. The unequal balancing, or the unequal, let's call it the unequal demonstration of power in relationships. Or maybe it's been about explorations of what is fair or unfair, or what is a good, healthy kind of emotional exchange. Things like emotional coercion, guilt, shame, fear of inadequacy, love me because I give you something. All of the ways in which emotions can manipulate us to give or get things from other people might be a part of this exploration. Also, just things with respect to money and finances in relationships. So for Sagittarians, that's all been crucial. Now, for Capricorns, this is happening in the 7th house of love and relationships. And so the exploration has been very directly about the emotional dynamics of power, of give and take. How do we each assert ourselves and our needs while respecting the individuality and will and needs and desires of another? Those are all big questions for a Mars retrograde in the 7th. You can also think about Mars retrograde in the 7th in terms of the overlap between marital and family karma. With Mars in Cancer, the connection between family, home, and ancestral background can overlap with the dynamics of your relationship, such that you're unpacking things in your relationships that date back to how you were raised. These are all different kinds of things that can come up, as well as just changes in relationships or major focus on certain key relationships during this period. Now, for Aquarius rising, we put Mars in the 6th. And Mars in the 6th is a place where Mars naturally rejoices. But a debilitated Mars in this house might have to do with the kinds of things that set you apart from others. Aquarians are often riding that line between being absolutely free from any kind of identification, just absolute freedom of self, versus a conditioned self that's defined by the categories and labels and groups that an Aquarius associates with. There's a tension we have to carry as Aquarians. Not that I'm a card-carrying member, but I have a South Node in Aquarius, family of Aquarians. There's a tension that Aquarians always carry between being utterly free from any kind of label or category, just being sort of a pure self, and being identified by various labels and group associations. The reason I'm saying this is because Mars in the 6th can be about the ways that you are forced to stand out and be utterly unique or different because of emotional needs that differ from others. So certain kinds of conflicts can come up with this placement for Aquarians that are forcing you to look at how you are subjectively, uniquely different from other people, and advocating for the needs and values that are very individual for you. That could be a place of frustration or anxiety or conflict. And yet there's an important way in which what you are in conflict about emotionally right now is very deep and probably pretty existential. There's also a question of what you're in service to. So with Pisces, we're in the 5th house, place of pregnancy, creativity, creative satisfaction, romance, entertainment, joy, pleasure. In this house, I wonder what Pisceans are going through with respect to the emotional dynamics and underlying emotional energies behind your creative life. For example, this is a transit that could speak to some kind of back and forth about whether or not you want to have kids or be a mom or be a parent. This could be about the process of pregnancy itself, or even the process of child rearing, and where you're at with that process right now, what you're learning, what challenges you're going through, and what ways your family karma is overlapping with the process of having children or raising kids. There's also questions about creativity and what feeds your soul, what nourishes you and makes you feel happy, at home, safe, secure. For Pisceans with Cancer in the 5th, there's a close connection between creative satisfaction and a feeling of warmth and safety and nurturance. So what are you nurturing creatively? What has changed with respect to what you're nurturing or prioritizing creatively? These are the kinds of things that I see for Pisces right now. So we'll end there and give you some brief refreshers. Remember, this Mars direct happens on Sunday, and then it carries us through about April 18th in direct motion. So we still have a little bit of work to do here, a good another month and a half or so. And so we'll be sure that we revisit this. It gets really interesting when all of these planets are going through Aries in the month of March, and their ruler is Mars in Cancer still. So that ought to make March a very interesting, very Marsy month. So it's not like just because the retrograde's over, Mars doesn't still have some things to say from the sign of Cancer. All of those Aries planets, Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, solar eclipse in Aries, Neptune entering Aries, all in the month of March, will be hosted by that Mars in Cancer. So more to come. And for now, I hope that you've had insights and that you've learned something positive. On that note, I will see you again next week. Bye.